Welcome to the Bros of Gardening. I'm your host, Mike Westphal, and I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel Van Dyke. And in the background, you'll hear his voice every once in a while. There's our producer, Alex. He'll be helping guide us through the podcast as we kind of approach different subjects and talk about different things. So we're excited to get started. How about you, Daniel?
I'm definitely excited. We've talked about this for a while now, and I think it's something that, will appeal to a lot of different people who are trying to, get into this world of gardening and landscaping, and we hopefully can pass along a few tricks of the trade we've picked up along the way.
That's right. It should be a lot of fun. And for this first episode, we're going to keep it very light and very easy. And we're just going to talk about a little bit about ourselves and kind of give a little bit of an introduction. So you want to start?
Absolutely. So, my name is Daniel Van Dyke, and I started here at McDonald Garden Center, which is in the Tidewater area of Virginia. And I started when I was 14 years old. And so I've been here for quite a while. And I actually started unloading Christmas trees, which is, a fun time of year to get started. Kind of worked my way through the company in different areas. I actually worked for Mike.
That's right.
That was one of my first managers. And so, he was running trees and shrubs, and I worked in that department. And then he became the store manager while I was working in the store. And then I kind of went away from the retail side of things and started to focus a little bit more on the world of landscaping. And that's when, I've done some different things in the landscape world as far as, I did some design. I've done, obviously, the installation side of things. I've run the installation department. And now, kind of take a look at the whole picture when it comes to landscape. But I've learned a lot along the way, I like to think, at least I certainly hope so, after doing it for over 20 years. It's ever changing. It's always evolving, but it's certainly, I enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think hopefully a lot of people will enjoy it as well.
Yeah. Wealth of knowledge. I too have been here for just about 20 years. So Daniel's actually got me a little bit on as far as time frame as being here at McDonald Garden Center. We're part of McDonald Garden Center. I forgot to mention that. We're a garden center located in the southeast part of Virginia, near Virginia Beach, Virginia, if you've ever heard of it. So we'll talk a lot about our area. But I started actually the opposite of Daniel. I started in landscape and worked in landscape for a little bit of time frame coming out of college. Didn't want a super serious job, so I helped landscape out for a little bit. And then I moved into the retail side. So I started working as the trees and shrubs. That's where Daniel and I met. I was the trees and shrubs manager. Daniel worked with me. And then I ran that store for 7 years. So I ran a whole retail store for about 7 years. Went into the buying side, which was very interesting. I bought kind of what a lot of people say is the boring stuff, soil and solutions and fertilizers.
But important.
Yep. So that was very interesting to kind of get, into that world and do some buying. And then more recently, you and I have both kind of taken over the operational side of things. You are more on the landscape side, me on more of the retail side, but we're partners in crime when it comes to running the garden center. And Absolutely. So Daniel and I have worked a lot together, and he's got a wealth of knowledge. I know I pick his brain, he picks my brain, and we're going to do a little bit of that here on this podcast where we talk about gardening and landscaping and what you can do at home, and we'll get specific, and we'll talk about specific types of plants that we recommend, and we'll kind of go through there. So at this point, don't need an introduction necessarily, but Alex will kind of help, like I said, guide this podcast a little bit.
Absolutely, Mike. So first things first, with somebody who already knows a few things already about plants and general knowledge of gardening, where do you point them? What direction do you point them in for a little bit more serious gardening, a little bit bigger?
Right. Yeah. So, I do feel like gardening knowledge, you don't have to have a ton. I'd almost say none sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, I think, as far as experience, obviously we talked about how much experience we have in it, but I don't think you necessarily need that to get started. And I think sometimes gardening and landscaping can feel a little bit like a daunting task because there is just so much knowledge. You go on the internet and it's ever changing and there's so much there to kind of try to consume.
Right.
But I always tell people kind of trial by fire, just obviously if you want to do some research on it, there's no harm in that, but don't get bogged down with that. Obviously, if you have a local garden center you can come into, that's a great place to start because you're going to have people here that, that have done it for so long and gained this knowledge. But, I've learned much more just kind of by doing and through my failures. I always tell people, dive in the deep end, you can take it step by step, but don't hold off on doing it just because you don't think you know enough about it, because you're going to learn way more by just trying to do it. And you can do everything right, and unfortunately sometimes it doesn't go right. I mean, these are living things. I mean, plants are living things, and so sometimes they take differently, acclimate differently, and so I just always encourage people to go for it. But obviously use the resources you do have. A local garden center, I think, is a great place to start, because they do have people that are used to dealing with people with different levels of expertise.
For sure.
So I always tell people to go for it, and I really don't think you need much experience at all.
And you'll never know it all. I
No,
think that's
never.
kind of cool too, is you'll never know everything that there is to know about gardening and plants. And there's, I mean, millions and millions of different types of species and plants out there. We'll never know it all. And yeah, you're right. I think the number one thing is failure is normal. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, we talk about the example that I always like to, especially when I'm talking to customers. Hey, you could plant 10 boxwoods in a row, and one of them dies.
Absolutely.
And you just don't know why. I mean, everything that you did on the other 9 is the exact same to that one, and it just goes. And sometimes it's because the plant just didn't acclimate for some reason. And, you know, that's part of gardening, is there is some failure. It's okay. You learn from those mistakes. I mean, how many landscapes, you know, have you considered? Or, I mean, there's portions of my yard that I've built in 5-10 years down the road, it's like, you know, I really wish I probably hadn't done this. I think I need to change this.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's part of it too. And that's what, you know, I always encourage people, as much as we like to come out, you know, we can do designs, we can do different things for people, but you really do want to make it your own, because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one that's looking at it every day and kind of, you know, appreciating it, you're
living
day.
it. Yep.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, what you say about the boxwoods, it's just so spot on, because I mean, we do obviously large scale plantings where we'll plant the same shrub 30 to 40 times in the same environment, same soil conditions that are prepped by us. I mean, we truly know exactly what that plant gets, irrigation system, whatever the case may be. And for some, you know, one reason or another, 2 or 3 of them just might not take. And it's, you know, same exposure, same everything else. So, you know, to piggyback off what you said, I do think, you know, don't beat yourself up, because a lot of times it really is of no fault of your own. Sometimes things just, you know, take differently than others.
Yeah, don't get discouraged. Gardening's fun.
It's supposed to be. Absolutely.
I mean, I think behind probably most sports, it's like the number one hobby out there. I mean, everybody wants to get into it. You can do it in small spaces. You can do it, you know, whether you just got a patio, you can do it indoors.
Absolutely.
I mean, the possibilities really are endless. And that's why I get so excited behind the topic, because I learn something new, I think, every day. And so I think that's the next part of this is, where do you learn, right, Alex? I mean,
Yeah, like what kind of resources would you kind of turn to?
yeah, I mean, Daniel mentioned some of it, which is, you know, local garden centers. Of course, I don't want to bash big box stores, but they're big box stores for a reason.
Sure.
And I think local garden centers have a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. And I think the point of that, obviously the key part of that is local, right? And so, because, you know, as we'll get into in some of these different, you know, shows and these different podcasts, is where you're at geographically is going to have a huge impact on what you can plant, when you can plant it.
Right.
And, you know, that's really where that local garden center or local resources can help you as far as trying to figure out what to do, when to do it, because depending on where you're at in the country and depending on what zone, which we'll get into zones, I'm sure, and stuff like that, you know, but, you know, all of that is going to be impacted by, you know, where you are at. And so that's where your local garden center is going to be able to help you more than anything. You know, a lot of times, you know, some great resources. There are a lot of, you know, college websites and resources like that have a lot of good information, but they are national websites. And so I always tell people, you know, how something grows in Southern California is going to grow a little differently than you know, in Virginia or certainly, you know, up north or whatever the case may be. And so I think finding local resources is really the best starting point for somebody who's trying to kind of break into the gardening world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where I learned, and probably you learned, I mean, a majority of our knowledge. I mean, you've got a little family history in the garden center. So certainly you picked their brains before. And I think, you know, I learned so much from the people that worked here at the garden center.
Sure.
I mean, McDonald Garden Center here in southeastern Virginia has been around for 80 years now. We're celebrating our 80th year.
Yeah.
So not saying every garden center out there has that, but if you're in Arizona or Colorado or wherever you are across the country, you know, go and find your local garden center.
Absolutely.
They're going to be a wealth of knowledge. And you mentioned it, websites have great information these days. I definitely recommend checking out your extension agents. You know, you can just do a quick web search on who your local extension agent is. There's a wealth of knowledge there. My favorite thing to do, especially when I was first learning all of this, was to go to botanical gardens.
Yeah.
I know it sounds kind of weird, but to go see specimens that,
Absolutely.
are fully grown, have been growing in the ground for 20, 30, 50, 100 years is really amazing. And it really helped me on the retail side because I was able to explain to customers, hey, this gets this big. And, I've seen one, I know what it looks like, but just to go experience it and kind of, get ideas in your head, take pictures and ask the people at the botanical garden questions.
Well, and even our most experienced designers, a lot of times will use the botanical gardens for inspiration. You know, they've been doing this and they'll still, they get bogged down or they get into a rut and they're like, I'm just going to go walk the garden. I mean, you can even do that here at the garden center is just walk the floor and you see a lot of different plants. But yeah, I mean, the botanical gardens is a great place to, kind of see what things will look like long term, but also just get some inspiration and really try to kind of hone in on what you think you might like. Seeing it fully grown and seeing it in its natural, kind of environment can really, kind of set you on your path of what you like as far as landscaping and gardening and things like that.
Yeah. So there's a wealth of knowledge out there. I mean, definitely check out some of those resources. We definitely recommend checking out the local garden centers. We're one of them. So if you're in our neck of the woods, definitely come and see us and ask questions. That's what we're here for. But any local garden center will help you out. Check out the EDU websites, any of the, national colleges around the country. They have great information and a little bit more localized to your area. Friends and family, botanical gardens, there's a ton of knowledge out there. But also know, you'll never know it all.
Absolutely. And don't try to because that's going to be a little overwhelming to say the least.
Just get into it and have fun with gardening. So I think, Alex, that's a pretty good introduction. We got anything else?
No, that kind of wraps up episode 1 here.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining the first episode. Brief, quick introduction of what we're going to be doing here, talking about gardening. We've got lots of episodes planned, so stay tuned for more. Next week, we'll be talking about low maintenance gardening, a really hot topic, so excited to get into that one.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.